Hi friend, I'm humbled you're here. You're listening to Uncomfortably Confident in Jesus podcast, a space of vulnerability and the realness of our Christian journey in this fallen world, where we hold the tension between feeling uncomfortable and being confident in the finished work of our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Mary Alice Figueroa, and I'm your host. Thank you for being here. Welcome, friends. This is Uncomfortably Confident in Jesus podcast, and this is episode number 1. I am both uncomfortable and confident, and also excited to let you all into our safe space. My husband, Hector, joins me today, and we do not hold back. There's vulnerability and there's rawness in telling the story of how we got together and some of the biggest struggles we have faced in our 15 years of marriage. I hope this encourages you and edifies you. It was such a pleasure doing this with him and so much fun. I hope you all enjoy it. Have a listen. Welcome to Uncomfortably Confident in Jesus Christ.
I know I'm uncomfortable right now.
You gotta speak up. There's only one mic.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just gonna put it on your face right here.
Right, please.
Today's a special day because I have my boyfriend for how many years now? 16 years. And the man, the head that God has placed in my life, the authority that God has placed in my life. And I say that not very lightly. It's taken me many years to accept the fact that he's my head.
Touché.
But it finally feels like we're in the right order.
Amen.
Of God, how God designed the family. So he is my beloved husband for now 16 years. It's going to be 16 years in December. And wow. I can't tell you guys how blessed I am to have this man leading me and covering me, spiritually speaking, financially speaking, emotionally speaking, etc., etc. So his name is Hector Figueroa. We learned that Hector means steadfast and Figueroa means a fig tree, and it symbolizes wisdom and success. And so everything that I mentioned really holds on to his character. It pisses me off sometimes how steadfast he is. Like he's just constant with the Lord, and I'm not. If there was a word for my character with the Lord, it would be like fickle or inconsistent. Either way, the roller coaster. Either way, the Lord has shown me mercy. In fact, recently he told me that he loved me so much that he placed this man as my head. And I can see it. I can see how God had mercy of me and blessed me with a man that would not just be there in the dark times, not get scared away from the mess and the ugly that I was at least, but also embrace it and love me through it. Like literally, he showed me what it was, or he showed me Christ's love. And I'm just in awe of my God for doing that in my life, considering what I've been through, considering the resentment that I've had towards the Lord. And he's just come a long way in showing me, continuing to show me, like every time I've messed up, he's shown me his mercy instead of his wrath. And the same with you. So honor where honor is due. And I honor you, my husband.
Thank you, mother.
And it seems like I'm taller than him here. I'm looking down at him, but it's how he's seated. Let me just
No, you're
sit
fine.
myself
You're fine.
slouchy like you
I
like.
don't, I don't, I don't mind height differences. You know that. Never had a problem with that.
We are, according to him.
We are. We're the same height now.
He says it's my fault. Tell him why is it my fault that you're my height.
Because you prayed for all things that are me except for my height. That's the one thing you left out in your
That's
prayer.
not true. I pray to God that I
I
told
would be the
God.
same height at least as you.
I said at least my height, God, Father. Like when I was praying for my husband, I said at least
Couldn't
my
have asked for a
height.
few extra inches. That's all I'm saying. Just a few extra inches.
Um. So welcome to Uncomfortably Confident in Jesus, a space where we get uncomfortable about our walk with the Lord. And we poke holes, or at least we identify the holes in our trust in the Lord. And well, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from when we met. Let's start from when we started dating. And I talk a lot, so you'll have to.
I'll fill in the gaps. You're a much better storyteller than I am. So
That's true. um, so we met back in around '05 ish.
yes,
We were dating other people,
yes,
and I became friends with your cousin first,
yes.
Rosanita. And I met you and I met your then girlfriend. We actually went to a Puerto Rican festival in Humboldt Park in Illinois. And you were well, no. She wanted to dance and you didn't. And I was so pissed at how you were treating her. And I went up to you and I told you, I am so sorry for the woman that marries you. Didn't
And
I?
choke on you.
I said that because I was so pissed. I'm like, why wouldn't he dance? Like, he's so lame. He's so lame. Oh my goodness. And
Which, by the way, I dance. I just
he danced very well.
I contacts. I don't know what was going on with me around that time, but definitely with my own struggles of things, just wasn't feeling it that day.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, obviously, so I judged him. Um, but there was a lot that went on throughout the months. You actually separated from that girlfriend. I
Yes.
was dating somebody, and
Which, funny enough, now that I think about it, there was no real reason for me to separate from her, except there was a growing uncomfortability, I guess you could say. Which I wouldn't say it was you just yet. Maybe the Lord prepping my heart for you. But yeah, it was weird. Just from one moment to the other, it was I would say the understanding of yolks mixing that shouldn't be mixing.
she wasn't Christian, and you were.
Right, I was at least around that time. I had just came back to church after a stint in which I had separated from the Lord from my younger youth. Yeah, it was just weird in a mixture of the two worlds, one foot in, one foot out. And the Lord just, I think, beginning to deal with my heart. And without, I guess, warning or reason, there was then the inevitable split. But because there were still emotions and feelings there, it was hard and difficult, I guess,
Right.
and lingering. Which then brings us to me not being with her, but then my mom's wedding day.
So yes. So I was friends with you, and fun fact, when I first met him, so I was in Florida. I traveled to Chicago to live with my dad at the age of 19, and the idea was that I would finish college in Chicago, which I did start. But then again, a lot of things happened not my way, and I became there was a lot of issues with my dad and the way that he was and he wanted to put rules on me, and
No,
I
let's
was
just call it what it was. You were very rebellious.
I was gonna say that I was very rebellious. Can you let me
I'm just saying, I'm filling in the gaps. You're a great storyteller. I'm just filling in the gaps.
I was very rebellious, and that didn't stop until, I would say, even now I still struggle with it. But anyways, that's for another episode. Let's stick with back then. I was very rebellious, and I truly encountered so many issues with my father. And you were there for me. You were a sounding board. But when I first met you, it was at the church, my dad's church, which you assisted, and you were youth leader there. You were playing the keyboard. We became friends after that. And I always told you you were like my little brother, because I I used to date older guys, and you're 8 months younger than me. So I used to say you're like my little brother, even though I thought he was handsome, even though I thought that you had some very much charm to yourself. I always kept it as my little brother. And for a year ish, we were really good friends.
I would
And
say, yeah.
I was kicked out of my dad's house, and I lived with another man for like maybe 2 weeks. And then I lived in my car for about a week. And then my dad and I reconciled, and I went back to my dad's house, but I was adamant that I just couldn't live there anymore. So I got my own apartment at maybe a few months after that.
You were roommating.
I was roommating, and then his parents' wedding happened. But before his parent wedding happened, God has always spoken to me through dreams. And God had given me 3 dreams consecutive that I was marrying him. And I kid you not, and he knows this, so there's no offense to this, but I kid you not, I fasted for 3 days asking God that no, it cannot be. It is not fair to me to not get what I want. How dare you, God, get in the way? And I've always been the kind of person that I've always asked God, if it's not yours, take it away. And I asked him this time, thinking that he would do as he's done other times. If this is not yours, Father God, please let it not be yours. Take it away. And he didn't. And when his parents' wedding happened, which was February of 2007, your ex-girlfriend showed up. And I saw you fixed up with a tux. And I did not know what was going on.
I clean up good.
You did, baby.
I can't lie. I clean up very good.
You were really good. Anyways, I see him, and I see his ex-girlfriend, and jealousy starts just like fuming up. And I start telling him that I don't like it, that why is she here, that aren't you guys, broken up? Then why are you inviting her? How dare you? And he's telling me, female, like, what's up with you? Chill. Like, you're nobody to tell me these things, pretty much.
And true story in those exact words too, probably. Back then, my language was very ghetto.
Let's just say God has worked on you. But I remember having feelings for you and feeling like I was owed a place in your life. And shortly after that, I started entertaining these feelings for you, and I was blunt with you because he was the kind of person that nobody would have known that he liked me outside of friendship. I didn't even know. I wasn't even sure you liked me because you never gave me any sign that you were interested in me other than a friend. And we will go to movies as friends with our sisters and cousins because our fathers, my father and your father, were good friends back then and still are. They're best friends till today, thank the Lord. But we would go out and I would give him kisses on the cheek and nothing. I would be like, man, maybe he really doesn't like me. And that made me even more intrigued. He says it was part of his game, but I think
for some part, I had a lot of female friends, so there were things like that I guess just wouldn't cross my mind, and so there was a level of bluntness that was needed to better understand if whether or not you were just doing that just to do that, or if there was something more.
Yeah.
Which, even when finding out there was something more, it was still uncharted territories. It was still a little weird because of the history and the friendship that we had and the history that I knew of you.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I wasn't your type because of conversations that we've had and things like that. So it was always, well, I'm getting a pretty girl to go out with me, so sure, why not? Type of thing in my mind. It was like, I don't know if this is gonna last. The personalities don't really mix. So I was like, all right, cool, let's give it a try.
And I remember that I had just gotten a tan, and you had picked me up from that tanning salon, and that's when I told you, hey, I think I like you, really like you, beyond friends. But I told you, I'm afraid that if we start dating, we lose on who we are as friends. We lose our friendship. And that was one of my biggest fears, is to lose you as a friend. And you just said, sure, we could try it. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And that day, and then parentheses, no guy was allowed in my house
Except me.
without my father being there. When my father was not at his house, this was before I moved in with roommates.
Yes.
No,
This was during our friendship.
Yes. No guy was allowed in my house without my father being there, except Hector, because of the relationship that he had with his father had with my dad. So he came by. We're here talking. He gives me a ride home. We're talking about what would it look like. We're like giving each other 3 weeks to experiment on our relationship. And if in 3 weeks it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. No hard feelings. We'll still be friends. I don't want to lose you as a friend. And I remember that I walked you out. You were about to leave. I walked you out. And it was nighttime. And I waited to see what you would do. And you grabbed my waist. You drew me closer to you, and you kissed me. It was a very brief kiss, but it changed my life. I still feel that kiss. I still feel that kiss. And I knew this was it. Like, I knew at that moment, this is it. And the rest is history. Nah. But it is, though. It has been. But there's a lot that that happened in the beginning. There's a lot that happened in the middle.
Yes.
After that kiss, that was April 1st, guys, of 07 that we kissed.
April Fools.
And then December 8th of 07, we got married.
April Fools on us.
But it is true. I mean, what? We dated 7 months and we got married. We were going to do a very simple civil wedding because we were both broke.
Sure were.
But at that time, I had moved in with roommates, and you were a youth leader, and I was at church as well. We were seeking God, and we were getting burned by fleshly desires and temptations left and right. I had the hots for him, he had the hots for me, and you were stronger than me.
But I still caved.
But
one of the things that the Lord has had to work with me on, right, is that level of leadership. And where you know things are right or wrong, you could stand at the faith of Jesus, and you could be strong with him, knowing what's right and wrong. Back then, I just coming out from my leave with the Lord, coming back, and right away being put into youth ministry, really not ready for it, really not understanding what I was even doing there, but there, present, trying, and I think that's where the Lord really started to just work in my heart. And unfortunately, flesh came over, and I couldn't stop it at that time.
And I was not any help. Like, I literally would tell you, don't you love me?
Yeah.
Why don't you love me?
You would say things that, would not help.
Obviously, it was my trauma speaking, so I am sorry about that. If I have never said that before, I am sorry.
Forgive it, my love.
But it was eye-opening. And especially because when we decided to get married, there was a lot of close relatives that were not opposed but warning me about you. I had a few relatives of yours that came up to me and literally said to me, you're making a mistake. This kid plays Xbox all day and will not be a good husband. And I always saw the potential in you. I always saw what God sees in you, truly. And I always knew that a wise woman edifies her home. And with that weight inside of me that your blessings will be my blessings and your disgrace will be my disgrace, I put it not just on you but also on me to make us succeed, to make us stronger in the Lord. And we took that verse of the Bible. I know it in Spanish, I don't know it in English, but that verse that says if you're burning yourself, get married. Remember?
Yeah.
One day we had that conversation and we're like, hey, we're kind of burning ourselves even when we don't want to. Are you sure you love me? Because if you love me, I love you. Let's just get married. And And we did. We both decided, yes, let's get married. It wasn't roses and pink colors. It wasn't rainbows. It was hard, to the fact that the day before our wedding, you broke it off.
Pretty much.
You broke it off. Remember that day?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was very much a heated conversation, and I was like, well, if this is what it's going to be like, then I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And probably broke it off for, like 30 minutes or so, and it was crying and conversation, and...
There was crying on my part.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of crying. Yeah. There was crying on my part, and then the day came. We were, like I said, we were going to do a civil wedding, and we took our parents, both our fathers, to dinner, and we told them the news. Hey, him and I were gonna get married. But before I say that,
well, and just for the emphasis, not to throw people off, we told them this months before we decided on the date, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were gonna get married the next day when we told them. No, this was upon engagement, upon deciding. That's when we sat down with our parents and our family, and we told them.
And you told my dad. You actually went up to my dad and told him that you wanted to date me when when we had made it official. And my dad laughed in your face because he just couldn't believe that you, among all people, somebody that he loves, would want to marry me. No. But he laughed. He laughed in disbelief.
Her father had the loving kindness that anytime someone wanted to date one of his daughters, you would sit across the table from them with the Bible in front of them and sort of drill them scripturally. Of course, knowing that I was coming from the church, and him knowing me and knowing my father, it was a little bit hard for him to do that, where the laughing piece comes in.
Like, I'm talking about red laugh, like red cheeks, like he just couldn't stop
dumbfounded,
laughing.
not really.
And we're both like we're both looking at it like,
is he okay?
Is this an approval laugh? Is this a disapproval laugh? What is going on? But he was delighted. He was truly delighted at the fact that you were courting me. And he really, I don't know if he had faith in us or not, but he truly did desire that we would continue on, because even after we had decided on the date, we were going to be married in November and through civil court, and then have the pastor marry us, through like a family gathering, because we had no money and we wanted to save the money that we had to an apartment, which I got first. I got myself an apartment by myself, but with the idea that you will move on with me. Move in, sorry. And then your father goes, well, my son won't, like, what was it that your dad go, like, your dad said something in the lines of like, well, my son won't just get married. Like, I won't allow that my son gets married just through civil. I want a big wedding for him. And then,
not big wedding, but a wedding.
And then my dad goes, he's like, well, my daughter, like, I want the same for my daughter. So this ended up being something that they went half and half.
Yeah.
In a full-blown wedding with 150 guests.
Was it 150 guests?
Yes, it was. And there was a church ceremony, but a reception. Yeah. And my dad paid for my wedding dress. It was quite expensive, but he paid for it. And I had...
It was a beautiful dress.
Oh, thank you, baby. I had a Cinderella moment, and even my updo was like Cinderella. I just wanted to have that that moment, I'm like, well, if I'm going to have it, I wasn't planning on it, but if I'm going to have it and the Lord is going to give it to me, I want it. And we did. We had a beautiful wedding.
Yeah.
It was snowing. It was icy. He fell a few
I slept and
times.
fell.
He slipped and fell a few times, but it was heavenly made. It was heavenly planned.
It was beautiful.
Everybody that met us will give us a few years, if not a few weeks or a few years of. We even gave each other a few weeks of going out, and God was like laughing at us, like, "Ha, whatever." And it's been 16 years.
Yeah.
16 years. We have two amazing kids. Debbie, who's 14, Caden, who's 9. We've have had ups and downs. We've have had left and right. Just a roller coaster of a marriage. And I had so much trauma and so much baggage coming into our marriage. And you, compared to me, didn't.
Well, we both did. How I handled my baggage per se, or the amount of baggage I had, was definitely different.
Mine was more out there for for everybody to see.
But that's also because you've also always been more vulnerable in that area,
Yes.
right? I didn't come to a space of vulnerability, whether with the Lord or with those around us. Honestly, it's maybe only been a handful of years now, right? For I would say the good portion of the first 10 years of our marriage, I was very much closed off in that regard.
It seems so foreign now.
Yes.
It seems so foreign, the concept of what we were in the past. And I think in the past 2 years, you would say 2 years, since the pandemic.
I think a lot of things really took a shift during the pandemic. Yes. I think that's when, man, having to be faced with sin in such a way that really you start putting into question your faith, how you're trusting the Lord. For those that know me best, know that those were the years that I myself, questioning so many years in the ministry, questioning everything that we had learned, everything that we had done, feeling like it was all futile, it was all just coming to an end, and starting a process of deconstruction, but not deconstruction to prove that God didn't exist like some people would do, but just deconstruction of what I had been taught.
Well, pause that. I'm not sure I'm still recording. Still recording? I gotta pee. All right.
Funny.
So talk to me about. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's slow down. Because you didn't get to this constructing just because.
Well, no.
So, because of my fears and because of my trauma, I've always feared. I've known the Lord since I was 9 years old, and I've always been, at least the best of my capacity, to the best of my abilities, I've tried to obey Him. And little did I know that a lot of my seeking of Him was for what He could do for me versus who He was for me. And because of what happened when I was 10 and 11, I sought Him for security. And so then I idolized you as somebody that could give me security. Mainly because you've always been consistent in my life. You've always been steadfast in my life. So I always treasure that and even idolize that to the point that I feared losing you. But not because, not, and this is going to sound weird, but not because I truly loved you, but because of what you can offer me, which was stability and safety. You were my safety net. And then the pandemic happened. And before then, before the pandemic, a lot had happened. I was ambitious. I was a feminist. I believed that a woman shouldn't depend on a man. I had a lot of wrong ideologies that I believed a lot of the lies that this world tells a lot of women. And our marriage was literally in the line. And I put working out before you. I put my job, my career before you, my education before you. And that did something to you. And even when you were trying and we both were trying to seek the Lord, because it wasn't the right order of the Lord, it was all messed up. And then the pandemic hit. And right before the pandemic hit, which was like around March of 2020, you surprised me with the announcement that you want to divorce me. Or at least you want to separate from me for a time because you don't know if you love me anymore to continue on. So that for me was, that destroyed me. Destroyed everything that I was building on. Destroyed everything that I believed. This, like, all my fears came true. And I became even more resentful towards the Lord when you wanted to leave me. So the deconstruction didn't happen just because. It happened as a result.
Well, that's not the only reason why it happened as a result, right? Because of, I wouldn't say not because of the ministry that we were in at the moment, but the ministry that we were a part of for 12 years of our marriage, I would say.
Yeah, it was.
Right? If we're going on to 16 years,
Well, it was since that what I was
doing...
born.
No, I know, but I want to have a rightful account because the ministry shifted, right? So it wasn't the secondary ministry that caused a lot of the problems. It was the primary, and so.
And you're talking about the church hurt that happened as a result of us being under a spiritual father, and I have air quotes on.
Yeah. All right. There was I would say because of my lack of understanding of what a father was, and because of my history with my dad, and the situations that I went through with my dad, I clinged on to a man as a spiritual father in hopes to receive something that I hadn't received from my own father, and something that I never looked to God to receive from him. So trying to fill a void, taking on this person on as a spiritual father, and not really being discipled correctly by him, seeing the opposite of maybe what I should have seen and what I should have understood, led to me continuing to just let you do what you wanted in the process as well. hurt because of hurt that was caused, and me not, I would say, either evaluating or giving you
Discernment. Yeah.
the priority that you required as my first ministry. All of that played, right? Your ambitions, your feminism, none of that was ever put to a stop. None of that. As a matter of fact, it was encouraged
It
because of
was,
the
yeah.
lifestyle that we were living. It was encouraged because of this middle class notion that we try to live here in America that sometimes needs to be killed. All because of all of that, I encouraged
Yeah.
those things, right? Sacrificing the things that I knew were more important because of just, I guess it was my way of saying sorry without saying sorry. Because of never putting the right importance to you as my first ministry, to my children as my first ministry,
It's like a
over.
band-aid.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So because I was, I guess, dealing with shame, at the same time, I allowed a lot of those things to happen, which led to bad teachings, bad understanding of Jesus, of who he is in our
Marriage,
life,
yeah.
what a marriage should look like.
Yeah.
It led to all of that, which then led to that period right before the pandemic started, where we were pretty much at our height of struggle.
And surprisingly too, on the contrary, we were at a height of financial stability.
Yeah.
Like we both had six-figure jobs. I was the VP of sales for a starting company. I was traveling the world. You were at the top of your IT team as well. And we felt like we were set. We had no need whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I remember the many times that I would travel, I would feel like, even way high in the airplanes, I would feel this void, this 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 hunger. And I would, I to the point that I would have conversations with my boss telling him, I don't feel like this is for me anymore. And even before that happened, that I was a VP of sales, I had a situation where I won a project, a multi-million-dollar project, and I was in Michigan with another company. I was the sales executive for another company, and the vice president of that company, we I allowed myself to be in a situation where he almost took advantage of me, and he kissed me. And I remember coming back home, the first when I took the flight from Michigan to Chicago, I went straight to your job and I told you about it. And that was, what was it, like October 2019? And then March 2020, you want to divorce me. And that's November 2019 is when I started being the vice president of sales, because I left the job because of what had happened. I left the job because of the kiss. I was like, heck no, this has never happened to me before. And I've been in sales all my life. I've been surrounded by men all my life. And it's embarrassing to say now, but I've taken these men to strip clubs, to happy hour, and nothing has ever happened, to the glory of God. He always protected me. But this time it was different. This time I felt like I just felt threatened by it. And so I left the job. I joined an old boss of mine in a new adventure. I became his VP of sales, and we were at the top of the mountain, and then you tell me that you want to leave me, and I just didn't know why. And everybody kept telling me that, well, follow him, he has another one, he's being unfaithful to you, that's why. And I never believed it. I even asked you a few times, is there another person? And you would say no. But there was. There was another person. You had...
I did ask, though, for the divorce prior to that person. But yes, there was the feeling of me wanting to separate, the feeling of me wanting to be divorced, the feeling of not being understood by you at the time was the opening that the enemy used for me to lend my ear. And in lending my ear, yes, I fell, unfortunately. It was... not only was it's difficult as I think about it now, because I've always been one, and even in our conversations, I've always been one where I've never understood the concept of the cheating and the being with two girls. I've never wanted to go down that path.
You always told me, if I'm going to cheat on you, I'm gonna leave you.
Yeah. And I ended up going down that path. And not to say that I'm happy I went down that path, but it was something that the Lord allowed me to stumble on to wake me up. And
wake me up too. Because it confronted me with my biggest fear, which was losing my safety net. And this, just to context, you didn't confess to me about the girl, about having another person, until way after we were through therapy.
Yes.
So this was maybe 2021 when you actually fed up and told me about the infidelity. Back then you kept saying no, no, no. But God used that. God used that to confront me with my own fears. Because I've always been I always told God, examine me, show me the darkness that's in my heart, so I may repent and I may please you, Lord. And back then, there was a lot of things wrong with me. There was, when you decided that you wanted when you wanted to leave me, I became, my heart hardened. My heart hardened. And I remember then that our friends, the Wilhelms, Alex and Charlie, they decided to stay with us during the pandemic for 3 months. So they stayed with us March, April, and May, and maybe throughout June. And my friend Alex, when I would tell her, like, hey, he wants to leave me, how dare he? I've been faithful to him. I've always been a good wife to him. If he wants to leave, go ahead. He can leave. Like, I don't care. And she would tell me, but surrender to the Lord. And I'm like, for what? I don't want to surrender to the Lord. I feel ashamed. Like, I always go to him when I need things, not when I'm happy and I have everything. And why now? I'm at the top, like, if the man wants to leave me, I'll get over him. Like, it's okay, I don't need a man. And I was telling myself that, and I was telling Alex that. But my heart was full of fears. Like, what's gonna happen now? What's gonna happen to our kids? What's gonna happen to my safety net? What's gonna happen if I try to date and now it doesn't go, and then I get my heart broken and I become whoever I was that I was criticizing in the past of, naive and stupid. And all of those fears just came crushing down. And my world literally just crushed down. Like it was just like cars, like a house of cards coming down, because my foundation wasn't in the Lord. It was in our safety net. It was in our own, what we were constructing.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's been 3 years from that. And so much has changed in those 3 years.
And it all really started with, even though it was a stumbling block and the Lord used it, I think, to something true that you said earlier, about who I am, my steadfast. And even though we had not been instructed correctly on who Jesus was, there was a fear of the Lord that I had, that I've always had. And I think maybe it was a month and a half into that situation in the other relationship, I clearly heard God say I had to stop. It was my reverence to Him and the fear that I had that I put a stop to it. It was not understanding, and like I thought, to be honest, I thought, okay, I'm gonna put a stop to it, but that's just what I'll probably end up going back, because there is gonna be no change. And then willing to accept what God was putting in front of me, which I think then that culminated with the therapy that I was going to, the beginning to see God in a new light. It was just then the movement, that initial obedience to saying okay, and stopping, is then what God used to begin to put everything back together.
Yeah, and I remember for me, in the midst of what was going on, in the midst of you wanting to separate, but we couldn't because it was pandemic, we were all on lockdown. So we were sleeping in separate beds, because I was like, well, if you don't want me, I'm not going to give you these goodies, so bye. And my rebellious state, my friend constantly being there like, God wants you to surrender, God wants you to surrender. And I'm being like, no way, Jose. He's had enough of me. He's made me suffer so much, and he won't even give me, like, I just felt like I needed to control. I just felt like if I didn't control it, and I was so fearful of surrendering to God, because I was so fearful of suffering. And I felt like if I surrendered to the Lord, I would suffer. And that comes from my parents teaching me the wrong aspect, in their own ways, in their own capacity that they had. I love them to pieces. But their service to the Lord was miserable. And so for me,
there was no grace.
There was no grace or joy in their suffering. So for me, suffering was a really bad thing.
Yeah.
So I avoided it at all cost, but it was happening to me. And I remember my mom coming through for Mother's Day that year, and after she left, she literally told me, just start praying for him, start praying for where he sleeps, and I have some holy oil, just place, put oil and where he sleeps. And I was like, when she was there, I was like, no way, that's not gonna happen. But then there was a fight that you and I had, where the kids were present, and it was nighttime, and you left the house after a big fight, and I followed you outside, And I was like, this is it. You know, if you leave, you leave. Like, this is it. And you left. You literally just left. And I hoped and I waited for you at least 20 minutes outside, and it was cold, and you kept telling me you're stupid. Go out, go inside. You're going to get sick. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And that was when I was like, all right, Lord, this is what you want from me? You want me to suffer? Like, so be it. I surrender. Like, I don't know what to do. Obviously, I have no control over this. I have no control over whether he leaves me or not. And at that time, I decided in my heart to surrender to the Lord. And I cried endlessly that night. I cried myself to sleep, asking the Lord for forgiveness, telling the Lord, I do not know how to go from here, but all I know is that you're my only hope. Because all my fears have come through, Lord, have come true. And I have nothing left except you. So I need you, Lord. And I remember praying that.
See, I tell you, you're a much better storyteller because my timeline was then off. Because I remember that night, and now that you said it, the Lord has allowed me to remember. I didn't hear his voice audible to tell me to stop till after that night.
Well, there you go, folks. But I remember.
It was after that night, not too long after that night, that I recall hearing him and him beginning to put that conviction in my heart in such a way where I knew it had to end.
The Lord is great. You see how things work out, baby.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that night, and that was a surrendering night for me. And it was a hard night because I had to put my kids to sleep and they were scared. And I had to comfort them when I needed comfort. And then I went to the room and I was just like, this is it. I'm done. I'm done fighting you. Like, he's gonna leave me. I need you. Like, there's nobody left for me. You're my only hope. And that day, since that day, I started praying for you. I started praying for you. You would go, I remember you would go for walks with Obi, our dog.
Yeah.
And I would take advantage of those walks, and I would pray. I would anoint. I would declare. I would, everything that my mom has ever taught me about spiritual warfare, I put it in effect, and I just went for it. And I remember then shortly after we went to therapy together, and you accepted therapy, and we literally drew a line in the sand for our old marriage to die and our new marriage to be born, to begin. Yes. And then shortly after that, we went to church. I started going to church again because I had stopped going to church for at least 2 years. And you followed me into that church.
Yeah, you went to a different ministry. I finished off the tasks and the leadership that I was doing at the current ministry and handed that off.
Mm-hmm. That's another podcast to speak on.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I guess that's what started. That's what started a lot of that. That's what started a lot of the going back and the studying in a way that I've never studied before.
Seeing God in a different way too, like getting to actually know Him, and
building
then God,
an actual relationship with Him.
And what I noticed about this group, this church, is that the group of men that you were surrounding yourself with were building you up to be the man that God wanted you to be. And in doing so, they not that they told you to confess, but God told you to confess to me your infidelity during that time.
Well, that was into my study of First John, right?
Yeah.
The revealing the darkness so that the light can shine on it, allowing God to heal, to cleanse.
Which is interesting because you remember that God was... So I had a confession, which was this size compared to his size.
Yes.
But the Lord kept telling me, confess it, confess it, confess it. And I was like, no, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, Lord. And then the Lord was like, confess it. And when I did, and I confessed it to you, it opened up the space for you to confess.
Yes.
Because then you were like, well, I have something to confess. And I was like, and that's when you confessed. And it was...
Yeah, the whole time in my mind, I was thinking I'm taking this thing to the grave. No one had known. I was in the clear.
But God knew.
But God knew. And so him beginning to put that in my heart, and then you doing that confession, which then, to your point, it opened up. And in that moment, I felt it like, you need to say it. And so I said it.
And then it's been what would you call the time since then? It's just been growth after growth, change after change. God has had prepared my heart for this. And I had many triggers. I still do. The other day I told you what I was telling you about a trigger that I had. But God had also prepared you for it, because you were so patient and you were so kind and so gentle with my own triggers. But it took me telling you, hey, I'm feeling this way because I'm triggered by this and this and that, because I'm insecure about this and this and that. And God gave you the wisdom, and God gave you the patience and the love to love me through it.
Well, I think, to your point, that's a whole other podcast, though.
Yeah, that's just opening another can.
that was never something. That's just the Lord confronting me with my own sin of anger and all the work that He's done to get me to where I am today. The people that He's put in the places to be irons to sharpen me, even my own children, accepting where my anger comes from, even the change of how I see my parents in a completely different light. That's a whole thing of a journey that, outside of our marriage, the Lord had been taking me to. And grateful for the fact that now it is not it is a sin that it will always be there, I guess, right? It is something that always will want to try to creep up, but that understanding of, I die to it every day, and I die to it willingly. I pick up my cross and I take it up the hill, and I willingly die to it, so that I do not get to that place. Do not get to that place where I used to punch walls, and I wouldn't want to be understanding, and so on and so forth. It just definitely the journey aspect, and just the few small short years of when we actually stopped living life for ourselves and devoting ourselves to God and taking in who Jesus truly is in our life. From that moment on, the trajectory has just been different.
It's like God's been slashing our idols left and right.
Yeah.
Because today I am a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I am about to homeschool our kids in August. So we took them out of public school and we're going to be homeschooling them. And somebody that was so career driven, so success driven. Now my success is seeing my family devoted to the Lord. But that came from that had a cost, and it cost me my old identity. It cost me my old life, but it's been so rewarding.
Yeah.
Because today I see God and Jesus in a different light, in the right light. I no longer fear losing you as a safety net, because my safety net is the Lord, is my Redeemer, my Savior. And I understand that you are my partner here in this earth to do God's will in this earth and do work for his kingdom and not for ourselves, which in the end makes me love you more, respect you more, honor you more, and I serve you now way better than I have in the past, I would say. I still have a lot to learn.
No, definitely. It's different. And even myself, right?
Yeah.
Serving you and dying to my own needs, and as Christ died for the church. That has been crucial in just my own renewing of the mind. And how I lay myself down for my family so that they could see that imitation of Christ that they need to see.
Yeah.
So that our children can start to build the foundation in their lives of who God is,
Yeah.
that they may start building on the rock and not on sand. And so my life is not mine anymore, but Christ.
Yeah.
And because it's Christ, I crucify myself as Christ was crucified.
Amen.
For the glory of him.
Amen. I would say the same thing. I would say that today I used to teach our daughter and say to our daughter, do not depend on a man. And today my view has shifted. Not that she depends on a man, but depend on the Lord. Yes. Depend on the Lord, that he will give you a head and an authority that is going to love him first, because you loving God first means that you're going to love me correctly. And me serving you and putting you above my needs, above me, pleases God, because that's God's design. And knowing that gives me so much peace, and it just provides me with that comfort that I've been looking for so many years. Not comfortability, but that comfort inside of me, that comfort inside of my soul. So I am grateful for the trials that we went through. I am grateful today for the downfalls and the baggage and the roller coaster that we went through, because you persevered, I persevered, and we were obedient to the Lord at the end of the day, and God has shown his face. I waited patiently on the Lord, and he turned to me and he heard my cry. Psalms 41. And with that, thank you, my love. I love you, papito chulo. Yum, yum.
You never read the instructions on this thing?
Hey. Alright, that one is recording.
It makes a difference.
And then,
do you have headphones? Because you could plug in so you could hear.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Wait.
Because you don't want to go through all of that and then all of a sudden the audio isn't good.
Let me see. Say.
2, 1, 2.
We gotta speak louder than that.
No. The whole point is to be able to use my regular
okay, let's
voice.
Did you mess with this?
You don't even know what you're doing with it.
I don't know what I'm doing.
So then why would you mess with it even more?
Let me see.
Oh, man.
Poppy.
Estamos aquí hasta mañana. Ay, 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 ay.
You're so dramatic. You're gonna teach me how to do it.
I would have teach you how to do it.
Yeah, because I don't know.
Oh, you're hilarious.
I hope I'm in the picture. I'm just gonna
Aren't you supposed to?
I don't know. It
But
doesn't
where-
show.
But then what does it look like on the other side?
Je ne sais pas.
Here, I'll put my hand right here where your face is, and then you can see if you can see one.
Okay. So, all right. So when you speak,
Say that.
so when you speak clear.
I'm gonna speak just fine. We heard
But
the recording.
speak with like resonance.
Resonance. What? No, I'm just gonna speak.
It's hot in here, guys. Okay. Let's pray first.